Venom has had more kids than many of the other human superheroes and villains who have existed in Marvel Comics since the Golden Age. Just think about that. Welcome back, Nerd Squad. I'm your host, Amanda McKnight, and this is Top 10 Nerd. Today we're going to get to know the Venom symbiote family a bit better as we count down the top 10 most powerful children of Venom. Join me, and let's get counting. Number 10. Lasher. Lasher is one of the symbiotes that Venom was forced to give birth to by the Life Foundation, who kidnapped the symbiote in order to make Venom make more symbiotes for them. Which is really messed up and explains why the Venom symbiote was so apprehensive when it was pregnant following its experience with the Life Foundation. Each symbiote that it gave birth to with the Life Foundation seemed to have its own special powers, and Lasher's was that they could remote control from a distance a non-sentient host in addition to their main one, using this other host as a form of reconnaissance or like a scout, or simply to just be in two places at once, which is pretty cool. I've always wanted to be able to be in multiple places at once. I could get so many things done. Number 9. Dylan. Dylan might not initially seem like a child of Venom, but in a way he is. In fact, it's even been suggested that he might actually be a part of Venom, a piece of the symbiote broken off and molded into something new, or at the very least blended with something new. Venom was a genetic contributor at the time of Dylan's conception, as Anne Wang, his mother, was bonded with the Venom symbiote when she became pregnant with Dylan. Dylan is therefore kind of like Eddie's, Anne's, and Venom's child all together. Dylan initially demonstrated powers which allowed him to control and bend symbiotes to his will, in addition to repelling and resisting them if they wanted to bond to him and he didn't want to. This made him insanely powerful. However, during the King in Black event, he lost this power, which it turns out was attached to the God of Light when his father Eddie Brock destroyed Null, who was attempting to take hold of Dylan's body via the living abyss inside him. As it stands now, Dylan is bonded with the Venom symbiote, which grants him some power, but he is also still very new to this whole thing, meaning he's not particularly skilled or really powerful just yet, which is why I ranked him so low. So low, despite his cool powers he once had that were pretty unique. And friends, before we move on to this next spot, if you are loving this list and you want more Venom lists, you want to learn about more of the Venom family, be sure to let us know by giving this video a thumbs up. Number 8. Riot. Riot is also known as being one of the strongest symbiotes to have come from the ones Venom gave birth to while being kept prisoner by the Life Foundation. Riot is often suggested to be the strongest of the litter, at least the physically strongest. He is the most buff of the litter, and he has also been referred to as Mr. Riot, which is a name I honestly love a lot. Because of Riot's inherent super strength, the symbiote generally prefers to use its tendrils to create blunt force weapons, which it can then use in combat against its opponents, or to brute strength force its way through any obstacles in its path. Riot Smash. Mr. Riot Smash. Number 7. Scream. Scream was maybe one of the most powerful of the forcibly birthed Life Foundation offspring of Venom, and I mean powerful just in the overall sense. I say was as well because technically Scream was destroyed by Andy Benton, its latest host. In fact, with Andy it was also at its most powerful, as Andy could also summon and wield Hellfire, which it would be immune to so long as Andy willed that. Unfortunately, in the end, the Scream symbiote and Andy ended up in a fight against one another where Andy was forced to defend herself using the very same Hellfire against Scream this time, as opposed to with Scream. This unfortunately kills the symbiote. While it was alive, Scream's powers were similar to the Venom symbiote, which included the added level up of creating wings for itself and using those wings to fly around, and the unique ability of turning its tendrils into hair that they could then manipulate at will, similar to Medusa of the Inhumans. Also, I just like hair powers, I think they're cool. Number 6. Hybrid. Hybrid is the combination of 4 of the Life Foundation symbiotes, all of which were forcibly created offspring of Venom. Hybrid is the entity that exists when Phage, Agony, Lasher, and Riot come together. Being a combined symbiote, Hybrid has all the powers of the individual symbiotes that make it up. Mostly this means it is power similar to relatives such as Venom and Carnage, but it can also absorb chemicals, produce acid which it can use to attack with, balance the emotions of its host, and can remote control a smaller non-sentient host such as a dog, while still maintaining a bond with its main sentient host at the same time, which obviously that's a power that comes from Lasher. Number 5. Sleeper. Sleeper is the sibling of Dylan and also the 7th symbiote baby of Venom. They are most definitely thought of as Dylan's sibling, as the challenging pregnancy that Venom went through to give birth to Sleeper was not something carried entirely alone. In fact, Eddie even helped directly with this birth, and it was perhaps one of the first pregnancies that was more openly discussed with Eddie, Venom's partner. Eventually at least. And of course in comparison to the other symbiote babies that Venom has had while with Eddie, which I feel like Venom normally didn't even talk about at all. Especially with Carnage. Carnage was like, what? And then later Eddie was like, what was that? And I was like, oh, I had a baby, whatever. Sleeper seems to be autonomous and doesn't specifically need a host, unlike some other symbiotes, especially in those early comic book days. I mean, back in the day, Venom was like, if I don't have a host, I'm literally gonna die. In this way, Sleeper is more of a giver, where their host would benefit more from their bond as opposed to the other way around. Sleeper boosts the abilities of its host and provides the additional power of producing various chemicals, some of which can be used to influence the emotional response of enemies, bending them to their will, making them sleepy, making them less aware so Sleeper can like sneak around more easily. Lots of cool stuff. And technically, Sleeper can also kind of use those chemicals to like get a little bit of telepathy going on, which is pretty cool. Number 4. Carnage. Definitely one of the most powerful children of Venom out there, and one that we can't have a list without would be Carnage. Carnage is much more ruthless than Venom and much more prone to violence, though this is likely because of the influence of this symbiote's first and main host, and often their chosen host to this day, Cletus Cassidy, notorious serial killer. Carnage has proven to be so powerful that on countless occasions it's required both Spider-Man and Venom, and oftentimes a whole assembly of other superpowered beings to put a stop to them. Even when others think they can somehow control Carnage, the symbiote has proven to be unstoppable and much too much to handle in most cases. Not only that, but even when Carnage turns to the side of good during the events of Axis, they still prove to be super deadly due to how deranged they are. Even when Carnage was like, I'm gonna be a hero, it was a rough time. Cletus Cassidy inside was like, I don't really know how to be a hero. Do we still kill people? Can I still chop this person up? I like them. I want to chop them up. Number 3. Toxin. Toxin isn't specifically a child of Venom, but is more their grandchild, I suppose. Toxin is an offspring of Carnage, but is believed to be even more powerful than both Carnage and Venom combined. Toxin has all the powers of Carnage, but is believed to be stronger. Additionally, it is said that they have a more strong resistance to heat and sonic waves, making them a tougher opponent in most cases. While Toxin definitely has a dark side, they can also be reined in, which is what their first host, Patrick Mulligan, tried to focus on helping them with, mentoring them and trying to help them learn how to become a hero. So despite Toxin coming from Carnage, they're not inherently bad, though they definitely do have a little bit of a Carnage streak running through them. That's what happens when you're Carnage's child, I guess. Number 2. Silence. Silence was actually what came out of Scream's death. Andy Benton bonded with Silence, believing the symbiote at first to be Scream. In reality, Silence was made out of Scream's remains combined with anti-venom, making it much more powerful in theory than Scream. Technically, it is not a direct child of Venom, but it was made out of the remains of Venom's child Scream, and Venom's sibling, in a sense, anti-venom, known for being one of the most powerful symbiotes around. So because of this, I'm gonna count it as a relative slash offspring of sorts, albeit a very weird, very comic book complicated one. I mean, it's kind of like a clone of Venom's child, but then also like kind of part Venom's sibling, so yeah, I don't know. Number 1. Codex. This is technically an alternate future version of Dylan where he becomes a version of the King in Black instead of his dad. Well, at least a version of that on Earth. We meet this version of the character in Venom in the arc prior to the King in Black event. Dylan and Eddie of Earth 616 must team up in order to defeat this alternate god mode version of Dylan, who has become ruler of Earth, creating his own hive mind of symbiotes there that he himself controls. Now, if you thought Null was scary, then you would probably also really love this story featuring Dylan of Earth 1051, known at first as Codex. This version of Dylan would fall under the influence of Null, which was ultimately what turned him dark. Dylan of Earth 616 and his father would help to break the influence Null had over Codex, only for him to fall into a coma and then later be pursued and bonded with by Carnage. Dylan as Carnage in this reality made him even more terrifying than he'd been as Codex. Once more he ruled the Earth, but this time a lot more sadistically, killing and tormenting its inhabitants as he pleased. Who are some of your favorite of Venom's offspring? Which child of Venom do you think is the most powerful and why? Who are some children of Venom left off this list that you still want to learn more about and you'd like to see us talk about later on the channel? Let us know in the comments below. This has been Top 10 Nerd and I am your host Amanda McKnight. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, you stay nerdy, YouTube.